Hello everybody, this is Words of Sorrow, and I have something a little bit special today. As you can see, I've ranked every leader from worst to best. Now this is not just some tier list where I'm placing them into tiers, rather I've actually done a little bit of math using a matchup chart based, of course, on my own opinion. And with this, I will be ranking them from 16 to 1, although not really 16 to 1 because some of them actually tie with each other. So let's go ahead and cut to the chase and get into the video. Number 13. Kinsano and Johnson. These are bottom of the barrel leaders that you should really be avoiding if you want to play competitively. They might be slightly controversial picks, seeing as Johnson has a few good uses on large maps where he can safely get an expansion base. Meanwhile, Kinsano can also do well when given enough mini-bases and freedom to spam jackrabbits and play harassment-based game. However, very often both of these leaders struggle to get where they're strong. Johnson finds it difficult to get to the late game, and Kinsano struggles to get enough rabbits, and then keep enough rabbits, in order to keep herself afloat and transcend her horrible mid-game. Both leaders boast worse than average hero units, with the Johnson hero being a glorified Y ability. Meanwhile, the Kinsano hero is useful in many scenarios, but is very bad on Tech 1, and later on it becomes clear that its inability to hit air units is a major downfall. They both also have unique vehicles that replace the Warthog. These vehicles are also both worse than the standard UNSC Warthog. The Mantis, Johnson's special unit, is much slower than the Warthog, even though it does do better in combat. However, this is not an advantage. The main use of the Warthog is harassment, and the UNSC rely greatly on this tool in the mid-game in order to buy time for themselves to build up a stronger army in the meantime. The Mantis just does not fit the same role that the Warthog does, and often when playing as Johnson you are left stranded with no way to get out of a bad situation because of the fact that the Mantises are unable to provide ample distraction for the opponent. For Kinsano, her unique flame hogs are more similar to hogs in that they have mobility but they do less damage to other vehicles and air units, while doing a bit more to infantry. They are also slightly more expensive. This means that they are basically just regular Warthogs except worse. While Kinsano does have a strong 4th point drop that drops in 3 Vet Flame Hogs, this often does not make up for the lack of combat efficiency in these units. Overall, these leaders lack much of what every other leader has, and struggle to achieve their strengths, and often are put into situations that require luck or an abundance of skill to get out of. These are easily the most dangerous leaders to pick on ladder because of this. The highlights of Johnson would have to be his late game, as his unit composition of Tech 3 Mantises, Colossus, Wolverines, and Nightingales is extremely potent. He is also very strong defensively, as his turrets can siphon and bunkers provide protection for the hero, who can sustain units and structures with his healing ability. Kinsano's highlights are strong passives in Heat of Battle and Redline, which can subtly swing the tide of battle throughout the game. Her Flamehog drop is also a great leader power as well as her Big Drop, which contains Vet Hornets which are quite useful, and Inferno, which is great for stripping bases. However, you must also have an army along with the Inferno if you want to guarantee that you will inflict lasting damage to your opponent's economy. I would like to say that these leaders aren't bad, however, I also don't want to lie. Sorry to all who like these leaders. Number 12. Serena. This is another pick that I think will be somewhat controversial. Well through most of this game's lifespan, Serena has been considered to be one of the worst, if not the worst, leader in the game. Opinion has slightly shifted on her through the years. She possesses a very strong rush in which she buys a single mini, her Bison, Marines, and Cryotroopers. An opponent who overbuys mini bases will instantly lose, as they won't have enough units to defend their base. However, an opponent who sees this coming will be able to defend properly in most circumstances, and then the Serena player is left with just about nothing. Her mid-game is often slow to get going, even though she has strong Kodiaks. They take time to get set up, and her hero, which is also strong, is slow and vulnerable during this stage. Her late game is not too much to write home about either. Although very annoying to play against, Serena certainly caps out at most at middle of the pack. Serena's primary highlight is her units rather than her leader powers, specifically in the early stages of the game. The Bison is a strong unit in general, and locking it down on an opponent's base will slow and then halt their economy completely. Cryotroopers can also be positioned cleverly near economic structures and mini-bases, in order to slow production of not just resources but units as well. A good Serena player will make sure Cryotroopers are constantly positioned next to all of their opponent's mini-bases in order to cause as much chill as possible. Something should also be said for her 5th point drop, which contains 2 tanks and a Frost Raven. The Cryotroopers in this drop aren't very impressive, but the 2 tanks really do save it, and the power proves itself to be very effective against low numbers of Wraiths and massed up infantry. Serena players know how potent she can be in the right hands. However, if you want to be very competitive, maybe steer clear of her. She will always have a place in the game as a strong early game UNSC leader. Despite her weaknesses, you should be able to get a fair amount of wins with her. Number 11. Jerome. Jerome really is not a good leader. I know it sounded as if I was singing Serena's praises, but that's really just because of how potent her early game is. Don't get me wrong, Jerome's early game can also be difficult to deal with from time to time. That said, he's far less cheesy, and so more predictable, meaning that ultimately he's easier to beat. However, he is still ranked higher than Serena because of the fact that he's more consistent in the long run. His mid-game doesn't take as long to set up, and his late game doesn't take as long to set in. Each upgrade, when applied to his hero, makes a massive difference. Getting a quick Tech 3 Jerome hero is a good way to end a game right then and there. His first 2 leader points are very promising, as he starts out with mines, and then time for heroes, which buffs all of his units to a certain population cap. It buffs their speed, armor, and damage, which is all very impressive. People love to fawn over Kinsano jackrabbits, but they fail to see the true strength of Jerome's. A cocky Kinsano player may try to rabbit mirror Jerome and find themselves dreadfully overwhelmed. Past these first 2 leader powers, however, there isn't much to talk about. Having 2 turret drops can be strong, but is it really worth 2 leader points? The answer is obviously no. Omega Team can also be strong at times, but usually you're either unable to afford it, or it's just not enough to turn the tides in your favor. If you want to play Jerome, you should be trying to secure as big of a lead as possible for yourself early on, by being as aggressive as you can with your hero and buffed units, as well as making the most of your mines. Don't take your foot off the gas for a second, because in most situations your enemy will have stronger fallback options than you. Number 10. Anders and Isabelle. These are 2 leaders that are quite different and yet rank identically. Both can net you impressive wins if used well, but doing so will take a good amount of skill and or game knowledge. Both are strong vehicle-based leaders. Isabelle thrives on getting out of massive hogs with Accelerated Assembly 2 unlocked by the 3rd leader point, while Anders' R&D lets her get cheaper upgrades. Unfortunately, both pale in comparison to Forge, who has a greater economy and greater damaging abilities. See Scatterbomb and Kodiak Drop. While Anders does better in the mid-game than Isabelle, Isabelle is known for being second only to the Arbiter in terms of late-game potency. Her tanks become shielded upon unlocking the best offense, as do her Gales. However, the canister shell ability is also buffed once this leader power is unlocked. I like to call these the Halo Wars 1 tanks, the tanks that every other leader in the game wishes they had. While they're still too slow to dodge nuking leader powers, tanks' primary weakness in this game, their shields, as well as the fact that Isabelle has access to heal, heavy metal, and combat salvage, work well to negate this drawback. Just be careful and watch out for a big air switch from the opponent when massing these things. Back to Anders. Why is she good in the mid game? Well, her Spartan can get upgraded faster than any other hero and is a menace if left unchecked. Her Kodiaks are even better than Serena's and can only be described as cancerous once set up appropriately. Then there's the Retriever, which can seal away a game before it gets to be too late. While Anders doesn't have a great early or late game, this mid game lets her get wins on even the upper tier leaders. Just don't expect the victories you win with Anders and Isabelle to be easy. They're very unit-based leaders, so you need to be able to micro accordingly in order to get anywhere. Anders is my personal favorite leader for this very reason. Every win feels well earned. These leaders are nowhere near the best, but are also just good enough for you to be able to eke out a win against almost anyone.
I'll have 2 number 9s, a number 9 large.
Paviam. This is a leader that I don't even think deserves to be this low. Paviam can beat just about any leader given the right map. On Rift and Bedrock, he's a very powerful pick. However, I made this list taking into consideration all of the 1v1 maps, so here he is, just middle of the pack. Paviam is well better than Anders and Isabelle in viability and is, I'd argue, the most well-balanced leader in the game. Paviam's main strength early on is the fact that he's able to tech and play tech 1 at the same time due to burnout. While your units don't enjoy any passives or even active buffs, your sheer numbers make up for that. If you want to just straight up tech and forget about tech 1, you can do that as well, and no other leader will be able to match your tech time. The strongest aspect about Paviam, though, is when you have Burnout 3 active on 3 generators. You have to build your base in a specific way to appropriately use Burnout, but once you have, you'll be able to slingshot into a quick Tech 3 in order to out-wraith spam any other banished, or simply spam infantry upgrades to flood UNSC enemies with beefy rangers and hunters. Pav is really all about getting the best army you possibly can before you go in for a Lich push, which is where you can strike the finishing blow. Don't always make the mistake of getting Lich on 5th point though. For as good as it is, if you're not ready to make the push, you shouldn't make it. Pav's late game is amazing defensively, however, you really should be trying to end the game before too long, as his offensive leader powers, later on, leave a lot to be desired. Rain of Fire and Ultramines are both easily dodgeable, and the Lich will get blown out of the sky by fortified turrets and fully upgraded anti-air units. Never sleep on Paviam though. If given the right circumstances, no leader is safe from him. Number 8. Decimus and the Arbiter. Yet another tie. Still in the lower tier of banished leaders, Deci and RB definitely have their weaknesses. RB tends to become a shield camp for 40 minutes simulator due to how slowly his conduit procs get rolling, and Deci suffers from a mediocre early game and a late game that, while good, can't match those of the top tier banished. However, both of these leaders can be played to great effect at the tippy-top level of the game. The Arbiter, being an elite, has access to superior core infantry and scout units. Both cloaked grunts and shielded ghosts are great Tech 1 options that can win you a good portion of the map. Despite a lack of conduit procs early on, the Arbiter remains tough to fight head-on in Tech 1 because of these units. His hero unit is relegated to Tech 2 though, as his Tech 1 variant tends to just get kited by scout units, though he can still be used as a hero killer early on. The same can be said for the Warlord, though I personally think of the Warlord as one of the weaker hero units in the game. The Warlord isn't as good at killing other heroes as the Arbiter is, as in order to truly guarantee a kill, you have to pull them in, slam them, and then Vortex. It's not just the unit doing the killing, it's the leader power. The Arbiter, on the other hand, actually has the speed to catch up with fleeing units and cut them down. Both of these leaders possess some of the most powerful wraiths, with Deci having 3 passives that all heavily augment their performance. The Arbiter, once endowed with Conduit level 3, can wipe a whole army with a few Scorch rounds and a proc. Another strength that they have in common is that once you're ahead of the enemy while playing as one of them, it's almost impossible for the enemy to make a comeback. Boundless Siphon allows Deci to throw away hordes of grunts and trade extremely favorably while transitioning into something stronger. His Rangers are some of the best as well because of Killing Frenzy and the anti-hero capabilities of Vortex. The Arbiter can simply camp a shield once he's ahead and let the time pass. It's been said many a time that every second that passes is a second for the Arbiter, no matter the matchup. Once you get to the point that you have a constant application of Conduit level 3 on a full population of Phantoms, there's not a thing that any other leader in the game can do to touch you. Number 7. Captain Cutter. Surprisingly, Cutter has managed to beat out a whopping 3 banished leaders. As far as I can tell, the jury is very much out for Cutter when it comes to high-level opinion. Most people think that Forge is the superior UNSC by a good amount, but everyone can agree that Cutter can just about always put up a good fight. Most of the reason for his lower placement is because he struggles greatly against the elite leaders, who can shut down his infantry with ghosts and then outscale him. Cutter probably has the most combos in the game, with ODST Slam, Mine Slam, Archer Slam, ODST Mine, every combination you could think of. While some leaders have counterplay to this, escape from Cutter's devastating combos is never guaranteed. You always have to be on your toes against him. The sheer swarm of Marines he can have running around like little termites can often overwhelm even the best players, forcing them into a multi-front situation and testing their multitasking abilities. Cutter also possesses one of the scariest 1-2 punches on 5th and 6th points: Close Air Support and Big Drop. Close Air can be used to strip turrets and force them to spam watchtowers, feeding you LP progression and draining their bank. This slingshots the Cutter into 6th point, and then he's able to make a Big Drop augmented push onto an unturreted base. The only drawback to this is just how many resources you need to afford both Close Air Support and Big Drop. However, another large issue that Cutter is faced with is his less than stellar late game. Close Air falls off, as do his drops, and Archer missiles can't carry his whole leader wheel at that point. Just about every other leader should outscale him once it's late enough, but don't get it twisted. His quick infantry is a pain to deal with no matter what timestamp.
Let him who hath understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number. Its number is 666.
Atriox. Starting off the top half of the Banished is the leader himself, Atriox. With so many viable builds at his disposal, it's no wonder that he's so far up the list. The main issue is that there are just too many choices, and it seems as if you need all your powers at the same time. Fortifications, countermeasures, mines, dying breath, they're all amazing powers in their own right. Mix and match them depending on what you want to do, and you're on the right track. My favorite style is getting fortifications and then doubling back for countermeasures, so that I can expo and then smack down an ungodly amount of raid camps in order to spam out waves upon waves of jump pack brutes to blot out the sky with mines. All the while, I'm padding around with a massive brute, with a massive gun, with massive range, who can teleport out whenever he wants. You could do this, or you could spam bases, or you can spam grunts with dying breath in order to fight mastodons, phantoms, and invaders super effectively. One word comes to mind when I think about this leader: respect. No matter the map or matchup, he's a big threat if played well enough. Solid at all stages of the game, with one of the strongest hero units at his disposal, it's almost hard to believe that he isn't higher on the list. The higher tier banished just edge him out a tiny little bit. Number 5. Vortice. This is for sure a hot take to not place Vortice in the top 3 leaders. Regardless, I think this is a fair placement. Since combat spoils has been banned and its usage has been shamed out of existence at a high level, we hardly ever get to see any Vortice gameplay at all. Personally, I don't understand why spoils is banned, or in many other cases Vortice as a whole is banned, while Ship and Yap are free to ruin the game with their ludicrously blatant overpoweredness. Vortice is S tier for sure though. His first 3 leader points, Spoils, Grendrop, and Invig, are all among the best leader powers in the game. A good Vortice player has to make sure to keep the pressure on constantly in order to abuse all 3 of these powers to their fullest extent. On 4th point, Teleport is helpful to dodge nuke abilities, and then on 5th point, Cataclysm, a map-wide nuke, allows him to wipe the floor with any ill-prepared opponent. The issue often becomes having enough goo to set up a good Cataclysm on 5th point. Usually you'll have to wait till 6th point and get Infusion Wake in order to rule out the possibility of the dreaded Throw Cataclysm. It might seem like every inch of his leader wheel is a highlight, and it just about is. Still, his late game leaves something to be desired. If you can stave off the onslaught, chances are you'll eventually outscale him. Still, if he burns his Cataclysm, you can't feel safe. His Scorch Mortar Maelstrom combo is just about as deadly as Kata is. Moral of the story, while this leader may be slightly overrated, you should still be breaking into a sweat when you see his face on the loading screen. Number 4. Sgt Forge. The final UNSC, the last hope for humanity. Sgt Forge somehow made it all the way up here. Insane eco, high utility hero unit, unmatched hog spam potential, and ever-threatening drops make Forge into a formidable opponent for almost all of the banished leaders. Boasting impressive matchups into the elite leaders, wiping the floor with Arby and standing a good chance against Ship, this UNSC leader stands above the rest, clearly and confidently. Hog spam, while utterly suffocating when done right, is not even his only trick. Marine or Flamer spam, plus Kodiak drop, allows Forge to play a deadly infantry game on not-so-hog-friendly maps. In some ways, Forge can be called the UNSC Atriox, in that he's solid at all points in the game and should never be underestimated. Scatterbomb, in all its laggy glory, may just be the best nuke in the game. Kodiak drop and accelerated assembly both make for compelling 4th points, depending on what playstyle you'll want to try. Grizzly drop, while also strong, is a risky endeavor, mostly because of the price. If you waste those grizzlies, you can throw away a game very fast. Transitioning into late game, heal, heavy metal, and combat salvage allows Forge an extremely sustainable army, much like Isabelle, except way better because, well, it's Forge. Sometimes he can fall into a pit where he doesn't have enough building slots to properly spend all his money, but sometimes that's a good issue to have. The more resources you float, the more you have to spend on drops. But even Forge, the God Emperor of the UNSC, has horrible matchups, particularly Colony and Yap. In the end, you can only ride the UNSC wave so far. Number 3.
Out of the lights, out all, and over each quivering form, the curtain, a funeral pall, comes down with the rush of a storm, while the angels, all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy, man, and its hero, the conqueror worm.
That's basically what it's like to play against Colony. From the beginning of the game, you have to be worried about losing all your starting units to a skit chopper or being greedy by doing a standard build and then dying to a cheesy rack second because you didn't scout immediately. Skits are one of the most broken units in the game, enhancing the HP and damage of anything they attach to, while the beefy Goliaths can be healed by Engie Swarm upon second point. Once you think it's over, 2 more Goliaths drop out of the sky. Teleport comes in on the 4th point, perfectly timed for when you'll usually be building the Hunter Captain, who can then escape from any situation at the low price of 200 power. Next comes Combat Repair and Dev Host, probably the most potent 2-point power spike in the game. Almost nothing can deal with a fully skitted up Dev Host with Combat Repair, a Hunter Captain, and a screen of Engies. While the mid-game for Colony can be a bit awkward to figure out, his insane early game is enough to make it a smooth transition, usually. And unless you're against Arby or Isabelle, you really shouldn't sweat the late game. Colony's capacity to turtle is nearly infinite. Whether on offense or defense, Colony is a heavy hitter, equipped to enter into a slugfest at any moment. Number 2. The Shipmaster. Not number 1 somehow is Shipmaster, the bane of Halo Wars 2. For how easy this scumbag is, he has no right being this good. The Honor Guard forces Detect while also being a stupidly fast, high DPS unit with an easy out via extraction. Couple this with Elite Grunts that have increased line of sight and node capture speed, and you can stall just about any opponent till you have Tech 2 and then Spirit Support, debatably the best 4th point power in the game. Try to rush a Shipmaster in order to stop his crushing mid-game from taking effect, and you'll find it very hard to kill well-placed generators and turrets, as Extraction not only teleports units to defense and heals them, but heals pads as well. Displacement provides ample opportunity for army wiping, buying time, or removing an enemy base's defenses. Another aspect of Shipmaster that doesn't get talked enough about is Raid 2. While everyone knows how good Raid 2 ghosts are, the truly overpowered side of this power is how it affects Wraiths. Ship isn't a passive-laden powerhouse like, say, Decimus, but it doesn't matter, as his Wraiths are so fast that you'll never be able to catch them anyway. This isn't even taking into account all of Shipmaster's teleporting abilities, 4 in total: Displace, Teleport, Extraction, and Tactical Gateway. Facing a late game Shipmaster is pure hell if you're actually trying to win, and not just turtling. The sheer number of mobility powers available to Ship means that your best bet for winning is just hoping that the Ship player is an idiot. For as strong as he is, Ship is not completely infallible. Yap presents a threat to him, as does Colony, Forge, and Vortice. Even Atriox can go toe-to-toe with him once you make it late enough into the game. His Dying Breath Banshees make for the best air army in the game, effectively countering Ship's enhanced mobility. Regardless, Ship's pure ease of use catapults him to nearly the top spot. We will never not complain about the Shipmaster. Number 1. Yap Yap the Destroyer. Call him what you will. The Destroyer, the skill gap bridger, the funny grunt guy, the icon of all my hatred. Yap is, in my opinion, the best leader in the game. He boasts winning or even matchups with every single leader in the game other than Vortice. He's got free units, a host of unique units that are easily a cut above the rest, such as Grunt Riders and Heavy Grunts, and he's not just solid, but thrives at every stage of the game. Early on, his fodder forces you to buy up minis faster than you'd like to, while also making you pay close attention to your starting units. You wouldn't want to get one of your guys blown up by a mine while the other gets hunted down by a chopper. He can leisurely buy up minis whenever he wants, double gen behind it, then keep you pinned with riders and choppers, while fodder smack at your generators and prevent you from taking nodes. On Tech 2, his goblins are unmatched in terms of pure usefulness. Dropping in his grunts from above provides him with a methane wagon which feeds him the fabled 40% swing, buffing Yap's units by 20% and nerfing enemy units by 20%. As if this wasn't enough, He can then drop a shield generator from the sky and use his Goblin's Heal abilities whenever necessary. And let's not forget about the Methane Party Beam combo, which nerfs your units and then obliterates them with a massive cleansing beam, which Yap can upgrade all the way to level 3. If you can't see why Yap is so overpowered, then all I can tell you is you need to play the game more. I think we can all agree that if he's not number 1, he's still top 3, and one of the most annoying leaders to play against. Screw this guy. If you made it this far, then thanks for watching the video. It was a little bit of an endeavor on my part. I think the production value should be a bit higher than my other videos, seeing as I actually got gameplay. It's not just me dragging pictures of the leaders onto a tier list. This is all still my opinion, and honestly, the way the rankings turned out were a little bit different than I thought they would. I went through the matchups and my opinions on each of them, and that's just how it turned out. So, you know, you don't have to agree with me, but this is just the way I see it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.